Welcome to the Quickie Podcast, the daily interview show where we talk to graphic designers about their journey to the creative field. And we do it in 30 minutes or less. So, are you ready for a Quickie?
Santosh, welcome to the Quickie Podcast. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
No, I'm super happy to have you here. But before we get going, are you ready for a Quickie?
Let's do this.
Perfect. I'm going to start with a really tough question here. Briefly tell the listeners about yourself.
Oh, about myself, okay. My name is Santosh Chawla. I'm a graphic designer, and I've been a designer for about 16 years, mainly in the wine and spirits industry.
Love it.
7 out of which have been with Affinity Creative Group. I'm also a automotive enthusiast.
Nice.
I think I can call myself a budding sneakerhead. I'm still getting into sneakers now, but it's still very new. And something I'm really deeply passionate about is horology, and I'm really into vintage timepieces.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, I live in Oakland.
Yeah.
And I live with my wife, who's also a graphic designer.
Oh, very cool.
I might add a talented one. and an 8-year-old who's soon to be 9, who's full of energy, lots of mischief, and very lovable.
Perfect. So do you get your wife to critique your work at all? Or is that a no-go zone?
No talk shop kind of thing, no shop talk kind of thing. We have our own. We leave our work at home, but we have, we both are designers. So at home also, when we're doing things or adding things to our apartment, it's almost like a design process. And it's good that we both have very similar aesthetics, so that works out.
Yeah, that works out. Can you imagine if they were opposite, battling out?
That would be more.
Perfect. So you have been with Affinity, you said, for the last 7 years.
Right.
But you've been in the industry 16 years. So what were you doing before Affinity?
I was at a design firm in San Francisco, pretty much doing the same thing, packaging for wine and spirits. And it's funny that the way I got into it was I had a project in school, and we were asked to just take any package off the shelf and redesign it. And, how would you enhance it? How would you redesign it? And I took a wine label, a wine package, and I'm like, I'm going to change this up. And little did I know that kind of opened up a whole nother world for me. I didn't know that, working on such a small real estate, that this whole niche market of design that you have to be creative, and as these are sitting on the shelf, they have to stand out from one another, and it was fun.
Definitely, and that's been the way wine has been for years with most people, is that the label is what's attracting somebody to look at it, pick it up, and once it's picked up and in your hand, that's likely to be a purchase.
Exactly. I think at that price point, especially when you're shopping on shelves, is if you're into wine but you're not really educated in wine, that's fine. The package is doing the selling. When you go into higher end wines, then you kind of know what wines you like and you don't like, so you kind of go in that. And you go to those brands directly.
There's sort of two different consumers, like completely different consumers. Most people, I believe, are in the category of, I'm going to my friend's house, let's just pick up a bottle of wine, and they're not going to spend $80 on a really good quality bottle of wine. They're going for something in the $20 to $30 territory, and they're looking for a really unique label that's going to be entertaining and tell a story.
It'll have a conversation piece, and it'll be a conversation piece at the party. But if I'm going to open an $80 bottle of wine, I'm going to keep it to myself and drink it and keep it to very close people. So
I love that. I hope your wife hears this and goes, well, he's not going to share the $80 bottle with me.
I'll share it with her.
Okay, there you go. She gets the pass.
She gets the pass.
So what I love about the wine and spirits and even the beer industry is it started with wine, where the label did the selling.
Yeah.
And as craft beer grew and grew, it used to be the Coronas, the Molsons, the Budweisers, like that's what you bought. But as craft beer grew and grew and grew, you ended up in this territory where all of a sudden craft beer was being sold by the label as well. Because you had so much more selection, so much more different things. What looks cool? What's a great conversation piece?
Oh yeah, craft beers have come so far, so long now because all of these especially in the Bay Area, we're so spotted with so many craft beer breweries, and they all have these amazing designs, and they have these digital printed directly, and then they stick it right on the can.
Yeah.
And every third week they have a limited edition IPA or a stout or a pilsner, and it's amazing. Yeah,
definitely. And now you're seeing that creep into the spirits world with the craft spirits, right? That sort of process of, you have a great spirit that's different than buying the mass-produced Smirnoff, things like that, but the label needs to do some selling for you as well.
Oh, definitely, because there's so many labels on the shelf fighting for your attention. You have to bring something different. You have to bring something new. You have to bring something unique to grab your attention.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So Santosh, I'm interested in unpacking this now a little bit. I want to kick it all the way back to childhood. What was your childhood like? And do you feel that you had a creative childhood that started you on this, design or creative career path?
Absolutely. I think, I'll answer this in two steps, but I think growing up, in the 80s, you had toys, and then you had the toy. And the toy for me was the HeMan. I don't know if you remember, but HeMan and the Masters of the Universe.
I remember HeMan well. Yep.
Oh my goodness. So that, and I had this whole obsession with cars, Hot Wheel cars. And that was it. That was my happy place. You could leave me in a room in a corner with these, and I would just sit and draw them, make my own world up, and I could create my own characters. And I think it really kind of started. I remember that as something that I would spend hours and just get me some food, I'll be fine. Yeah, so that's where it kind of really started. But I think I have to give kudos to my mom and really give her. She was my champion, basically, and she really encouraged me. She would line up art lessons during summer breaks for us, and she would encourage me to kind of, continue with my sketching and drawing processes. And she was really the one who pushed me to go to art school. And, growing up in India, it was always very academically sort of leaning.
Yes, which I've heard before.
It's always been like, you study well, you go to good schools, you get good grades, and you become a doctor, engineer, and stuff. And art was an industry. Design was an industry there, but it was never looked upon as a career path. It's great for a hobby, but it seemed like it was still not right there. And I think my mom was really the one who kind of put her foot down. And I had a family business that my father and grandfather had grown for a long time, and it would have been very natural for me to kind of just join the business and be part of the business. But my inclination I was always more inclined towards art and creating. And even so funny, back in boarding school, I think a few of my friends can actually thank me for completing their art aspect of their assignments, because I would sit and do that for them.
Yeah, totally. And that's, I've heard that before, how the design and creative industry, well, it is a thing in India. It's not viewed with the same prowess as engineering and becoming a doctor and those sort of, I don't even know what the right term is, but those really high-end sounding careers, right? The prestigious career path.
The prestigious careers will give you good salary and you'll make a lot of money, that kind of stuff.
Yep. Yeah. So it's interesting to hear that, your mom was on the supportive side of you wanting to pursue the creative.
Absolutely.
Because that isn't always the case. It's usually work for you to convince them that, no, this is legit.
I think if my dad had his way, he would have been like, nope, just come to the business. We'll, show you the ropes. And, and then, but I think he came around, and my grandfather was old school. And so he was like, you have a business. Why would you do something else? You have it set. You can just come in and learn the ropes.
Yeah.
But I think everybody, including my grandfather, kind of saw the joy I was having doing. I actually started working at an ad agency and really enjoyed it. And he actually, everybody came around, which really made me feel
awesome.
Good about what I'm doing.
Makes it a lot easier to pursue.
And it does make it a lot easier. Totally.
That's great. So what age did you come over to North America?
24.
Okay, so you were 24.
I came in 2002. I actually do remember the date, June 6th, 2002.
You landed on North American soil.
San Francisco Airport.
Perfect. So did you have a job lined up when you came out here, or did you come out looking for that?
No, actually. So right out of school in India, after art school, I got a job at an ad agency.
Yeah.
And, it was creative field. I'm like, great, it'll be fun to kind of try it out. I worked there for 2.5 years. And the interesting part was it was predominantly ad. It was an ad-based agency, but we would often get projects for branding and packaging. And somehow I gravitated towards it. And towards the end of it, it almost became like, oh, it's a branding packaging project. Give it to Santosh. He'll be totally into it. Mm-hmm. And I felt like I was really kind of understanding or enjoying what I was doing. And Academy of Art here in San Francisco one time had this program where you could send in your portfolio. You could be a student, you could be a professional. You send in your portfolio, and you could get 100% grant for a semester. And I got the 100% grant for a semester. For you. So I'm like, you know what? I'll try it out. I'll go over there 6 months and get a taste of the West and see what it is like to be there.
Yeah.
And been here ever since. Enjoyed it thoroughly, and then was able to secure a job here. And and the rest is history, as they say.
Very cool. You just made yourself comfortable in California.
Yep. California, I've been there pretty much.
Perfect.
Golden State.
That's awesome, man. So Santosh, I want to know then, through this creative career, from advertising agencies in India to coming over here and pursuing over here, what has been the most influential design of your life so far? Something that you saw along the way, maybe even earlier in your career, and has just stuck with you since?
I can say, actually, now that I'm thinking back, I can say that it's a dying experience. What I'm talking about is album covers and viewing those, in the store, lining up, showing up and seeing the new album section and going through your art, looking for the artist that you're hoping that has in your album. Mm-hmm. And I remember so distinctly, and I don't know why these albums come into my mind, but it was Guns N' Roses' Use the Illusion, the red and orange covers with the type running, the condensed type running across on vertically. But I remember that it was so exciting just to even look at the cover, because it was almost like it's a window into what you're going to listen to. Mm-hmm. And it is something that you don't experience now. It's you sample the 30-second snippet on the track online and you download it. Yeah. So, that's kind of cut off. So I don't think if I knew that this was a graphic design job that somebody didn't, it is obviously done by a graphic designer, but I didn't know that then. But I think there was something very attractive about it, something very mysterious about it, just picking up the cover, looking at it, before even you put the disc into your player, you were experiencing it visually, then you experience it through your ears, and then you get the whole, where you have this two art forms coming together. I think that is something I feel really kind of triggered something, or at least sparked a few things. I would say.
There's crossover to that effect to so many different industries. I love your explanation of, you see it, and in your mind that creates a perception of what you're about to listen to. And then you listen to it. And you could also look at that and analyze that. Does this visually match what I'm hearing? Mm-hmm. And make that connection. Mm-hmm. But what's interesting is a few people I've interviewed who specialize in the beer industry is when they're creating a label, they're tasting beer while they're coming up with concepts. Like they're tasting the product. Mm-hmm. What does this remind me of? What are the nostalgic elements of this to me? Mm-hmm. What flavors am I picking up? What are they trying to do with this particular brew?
Yeah.
And so it's that same kind of effect where it's, multiple senses coming together to create an aligned experience.
Absolutely, and in same thing with like you're talking about with the beer. By sipping it, even trying to even before deciphering the nuances and the taste and the flavor profiles you're getting from it, just by sipping it could take you to a different place or a different memory. So that could be an influence to your artwork.
Yep.
So I think it is. It's pretty amazing how all of these are connected, and I have to say, not necessarily the covers of the CD covers led up to what was inside, really kind of lived up to it. But,
Totally.
But that's the charm of it, and that's the surprise of it.
For sure.
Yeah.
That could be like early days, overpromise, underdeliver.
Yes.
Where you buy like some food off the shelf. Look at this packaging. This is amazing. This is going to be so great. Look at the cinnamon swirls are perfectly in there. This is incredible. And you open up the box and like, what is this?
Why is that flat and dark looking?
Yeah, exactly. This looks burned. What happened?
It looks burned.
Santosh, who are a couple designers and brands that you look up to now and closely follow, and what about them do you like?
Oh, there's so many designers now, and there's so many artists and typographers and illustrators. Thanks to Instagram, you can follow an artist in Sweden or in Poland or in Tennessee or so yeah, I think there are tons of people I really admire, and you had a couple on your show as well, but I think for me the one I relate most with is, I mean, you can call him the poster boy of Bauhaus design. Form follows functions, is Dieter Rams. I'm kind of I struggle between a lot of design disciplines like graphic design, obviously, but industrial design, automotive design. So it really kind of it really takes my fancy. And so I think Dieter Rams, just his, and in San Francisco at the SF MoMA, they had his exhibit of all his designs that when he was at Braun, when he was the creative director of Braun, how he kind of streamlined all the design, how he made everything on the product is what you need and nothing that you don't need, nothing superfluous, nothing, shiny just for the heck of it to call attention. It's just distilling it down. And I think I try to apply that to my, my design, to my daily life, to how I work. And I think I really feel there's a sense of calm that I get when I kind of try to approach it in that sense. And so I really kind of feel that he is someone I really look up to.
Nice. I like that. One of the legends, the big names in it, I guess you could say.
Yeah, one of the big legends. And then, there are other companies that have really taken influence from his design aesthetic and have done successfully. And I think there you can apply that to pretty much anything, any industry, any. Yeah, I mean, you could apply his theory to anything. Yeah, I feel, and talking about his aesthetics, I think there's a brand that I really look up to, or at least follow, is Nomos. It's a watchmaking brand here out of Germany, and I think they really kind of take his aesthetics, the Bauhaus aesthetics, and really kind of distill it down to their products, to their design, to their catalogs, to their website. And I think with such a minimalism sort of approach comes a very rigorous study of typography, case design, legibility, hierarchy on the dial, good looks. So I think Nomos really kind of embodies that essence really well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nice name. I'm not familiar with their artwork stuff, but I have an image now based on what you've described. So after this, I'm going to look it up and see if that is the image. So Santosh, this next question, I feel like you're going to have a pretty solid answer for, given that you've been in the spirits and label design world for a little while. But I want to hear a little bit about how you have utilized print and packaging design in your career. Any special projects that really stand out to you that were printed or for packaging?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in a way, being in the design, in the wine design industry, we're kind of lucky because we get to really play with foils and textures and embossing and gloss and matte, because now the consumers are much more aware of all of these enhancements on labels. When you see them on the shelf, I feel like consumers understand, oh, look at this treatment, look at this foil. They understand paper quality, they can see it. So I think this industry really kind of helped show some of those enhancements that you can really play up with, which I didn't know when I first joined the agency. So, and I'll talk about a couple of projects. The first one, I don't have the actual product because it's from way back, I think in the mid 2000s, in 2006 or something, when I was in my previous agency. I worked on this package where they were coming out with this restaurant-only wine bottle.
Okay.
And so it didn't have to work hard on the shelf, but it had to really catch your eye. It really had to kind of look appealing and, in the super premium sort of category, priced around $25-$30. And so I can show you the visual if that helps. But I can also describe it for the listeners. The bottle it's a Cabernet bottle, so it's a Bordeaux, tall tapered bottle.
Oh, cool.
And I'm just holding up this image for Dave, but it basically the brand name and the varietal kind of makes up the trunk, and the brand is called Silver Palm, and the top of the palm fronds makes up the top. And if you look closely, I didn't know when I was designing it that this is a possibility, but I could actually use precious metal, platinum, on the bottle, fired directly on the bottle, along with metallic ink. So I thought this was just fascinating and something that you have seen these kind of ACL treatments on shelves, but I never knew that could be possible, something that I would ever design. And I think the execution just came out fantastic. And and then I think they're still around, but I think then they went onto shelves. So I think they've tweaked with the design, which we didn't get to do, but I think the treatment still exists.
For sure.
So that was an exciting project to work on. But more recently, we worked on this package. I'll show you the before. It's called a VC.
Okay.
Okay, and it's this cream vanilla color looking label with this type going across, and you see the stacking here, and the product itself is really good, but the package doesn't really communicate that, and so they wanted to kind of rejuvenate the brand, add some zest to it, add some really shelf pop, and appeal to a younger audience. So what we came up with was this.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
what a contrast!
Pretty revolutionary change. So I'll describe the label. It's a prosecco, so it's on the shorter bottle, but the label actually, if you look at this, I don't have a printout of the actual inspiration. It was an inspiration from a vacation that my wife and I were in. Actually, it was a honeymoon. We were in Italy.
Nice.
And we went to multiple, the Duomos and the churches and the old architecture, looking at those things. And this was actually similar. The inspiration came from a photo of a tile from one of the Duomos in the church, which I happened to just kind of browse when we were working on this project, and that just clicked. And so if you look closely, all these little tile works are embossed, and then we use this silver plaque in the middle for the branding, which is matted down. So it's really premium. It's not gaudy, but it definitely catches your eye.
Definitely.
So you get the before and after.
Wow, what a difference.
Effect. Yeah. So this is something I'm pretty proud of, and I think it's just rolling out into the market, and I think it'll really do well.
That's cool. Those are great ones. Thank you so much for sharing those, Santosh.
Yeah, of course.
So the next few questions I have for you, I have to drag you through the mud a little bit, pull up some bad stories, and then we'll quickly get through it together, and then we'll turn it around and end in a happy place here.
Sounds good.
So what has been the most challenging period of time in your design career so far? Why was it challenging, and how did you get through it?
So challenging, I don't think it was directly related to my career, but I feel it's challenging today is somehow we've, or at least, and I'm talking just personal, but I think we've become sort of a lazy bunch now because everything is available by a click of a mouse online, or even a voice command. So now you don't even have to move your finger; you can just command it and it shows up. But what I'm trying to get to is, it's, and I absolutely will not, I use them to the most, but I'm talking about like Pinterest and Instagram and stuff that sometimes you do searches and you really the results are like design ready. I'm like, oh my goodness, that's the solution that I really want for my product, but I can't use it because somebody already has done it. So I feel like that the challenge is where you have to take what you saw now plus 20 other results that have shown up and still make it different. So there's a challenge there, but I feel like somehow there's always something influenced by something, which is influenced by another thing, which is influenced by another thing. And I feel like it's challenging because there's only so many ways you can do an oak tree or a grapevine or something. But having them show up on Pinterest, you almost feel like, oh my goodness, somebody's actually solved it and it looks better, or that's exactly what I was thinking of, and I got to do something different. So I feel like that's challenging, and I think also we're experiencing everything through a screen now. Mm-hmm. I feel like, and at least for me, I want to find a balance. Maybe step out, go to a museum. I don't think last time I went to a museum, and we have like so many museums in the Bay Area, and I'm like, especially in San Francisco, and I'm like, I don't think the last time I went there. So I think I feel the challenge is to find a balance of how you can, even by walking out on the streets, you get sounds and sights and something that might spark something and inspire you with something that you're not necessarily getting from your digital screen. And I feel like that is something that would be, going forward, would be a great thing to achieve, to find that happy balance.
Totally, I can see that, where you look something up online, but that becomes just your first reaction rather than, I'm going to take myself away from this and go see what else is out in the world and see what that brings me, what kind of value and inspiration and creativity that brings me, versus using a screen when we're locked into screens all the time.
Absolutely, and people are commuting, they're challenging, they're driving, they manage the kids, schedules and all that stuff. So I see that why people go, and I do that, and I'm completely guilty of doing that. But it is something that I think we have to step back and be like, okay, wait. Let's not just see what's the first 10 results or 20 results that come up. Let's kind of pull back and let's see what else can we bring to this table. Mm-hmm. And I think that is something that I think if I worked on that, I think the results would be even deeper and even more richer, I think.
Totally.
Yeah.
All right, Santosh, I want to get a little bit more specific now. I want to hear about a specific design or project that you were a part of that just did not go well or bring the desired result. What was that like? What did that feel like? Can you take us to that story?
I'm going to keep the names anonymous,
sure.
But we were approached to do an identity for a client, and which went surprisingly like click, round one, minor changes, and boom. I'm like, wow, that was good. But
doesn't happen often. What's going to happen now?
Yeah, but I think it was getting saved up for the second half of it. But where after that, they wanted obviously a digital presence, and they were like, you know what, just here's Squarespace. You take a template, slap our elements on it, and call it a day. I'm like, okay, and so. We did that, and I had to do a crash course because I'd never done Squarespace. So that was a challenging experience, but we figured it out. And after round one, it was like, oh, maybe can you do this? But I'm like, that's not part of the template. So can you modify that? Then can you modify this? Can you modify that? So instead of just going with a custom website from the beginning, it became, can you custom that? Can you custom that? Can you custom this? And in the end, it kind of became a hodgepodge of a template which had these custom elements just jammed into it. Mm-hmm. So I think it would have been a smoother. In the end result, everybody was happy. So that was good. But I think just the journey getting there, I think it would have been easier just to go with, hey, you know what? Let's do a custom. I want these options. I want these pull down menus and stuff like that, which you don't necessarily find in the templates. So I think that was sort of a little frustrating, but I think in the end it turned out good, so everybody is happy.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So having a bunch of knowledge of the print world, mm-hmm. And I know that you've been involved in that world with label creation and label print. Yep. I'm sure you've done some press checks and all of that sort of thing.
Yes.
Have you ever had an experience where you get to a press check and it is just not at all what you were going for, what the customer is going for? Can you tell me just a little bit about that? No client names, no printer names, but just what was that experience like and how did that end?
So we, this is again back at my previous agency, we showed up to the press check 9:30 in the morning. It was an hour and a half drive out from the city. We get there, they're not up and running. We were like, okay, how long will that take? It'll take maybe a couple of hours. I'm like, okay. Luckily we had a computer, so we could continue working. Mm-hmm. Myself and my production director, and then a few hours later, it's up and running. The colors are completely off, even though we've signed off on proofs. This kind of went on, and we were there all day, and then they were like, "Oh, we've got to redo the plates, so that's going to take us an X amount. It'll be ready at 3 a.m. in the morning." And so we had to get a hotel stay at the place, and we were like, "Okay, when it's ready, 3 a.m. you give us a call." So 3 a.m. in the morning, we're getting up, getting ready, going to the press, and making sure it's working out. And I think by the end of it, there was some serious tension in the space, because they were not really getting what we had signed off on. Mm-hmm. And the funny part is we were signed off on it, so they should be able to achieve it. Mm-hmm. And it just became really kind of tense. And this was still when I was new at that agency. So my production director is a wizard. We call him the Wiz. He really knows print really well. And so he was like, "This is BS, and somebody's gonna have to listen to this." And it kind of got a little, but that was probably the most intense press check I've ever been to. Mm-hmm. But I think at the end the result came out okay. They managed it, but those 2 days were just a little.
Yeah, that really speaks to the relationships with your vendors, and
yes,
and also being clear on expectations. But would you say it's fair to say that the majority of press checks, you go in, you say that looks great, or you tweak one little thing, and boom, happy days, we're off to the races?
Majority of press checks, and maybe you tweak a couple of things, and maybe add a little, yellow and the red is feeling too pink, or so you do a few of those steps. And I think also going in as a designer and our production guy, he really kind of knows what you need to tell him. Okay, do this to get to this, because you want to give him. Because sometimes obviously the press operators, and they're very familiar with the workings of the press. But mm-hmm. I think if you go in with do this and you'll get this result. You'll get to that result quicker than saying that I don't like this, change it, or I don't like it. But if you go in with I don't like it, maybe you add a little yellow to that. I think you'll get to that. I think it just makes everybody work quicker and more efficiently.
Just communication and guidance.
Just communication and guidance. And on the opposite end of it, I know we're not talking about the good stuff. We're digging up all the dirt, but I had an opportunity to go to Italy for a press check in 2006. So I'm like, that was a score.
That's awesome.
That was a good press check.
Nice win.
Yeah.
Well, your timing is right, because I'm going to turn the bus around here, and I want to hear now about the project that you've been a part of that you are the most proud of, Santosh.
I think I'm going to answer this two ways again. The first project is obviously, it's almost like your first kiss. It's the first project that you see actually printed and on the shelf. Mm-hmm. So I think that, and it's a brand that's still around, and they've gone through a few iterations, but I think it was about a year and a half I was at the agency, and finally I was able to really work on a full-fledged project, and boom, it was something that I designed, and with minimal tweaks, it was just approved, and it was this extension, and it extended through like 13 varietals, so you had all these colors that I had to work on, and seeing that on shelf is one of the best feelings. I think all designers can agree with that, whether it's a wine label, whether it's food product, it's whatever it is. Mm-hmm. I think seeing your first package on the shelf was pretty amazing. I think awesome. that was pretty.
It is, and that's spoken to be your first anything in print.
Yes,
that you have seen in digital world for so long, and then you've seen in proofs, but it's not quite the right thing. And then you get the finished booklet, the finished piece in your hand. Mm-hmm. That's a memory that sticks with them.
That's a memory. I think that would be one, and I think the second one is actually not even part of graphic design. It's I think in the beginning of the show I mentioned that I'm an automotive enthusiast, mm-hmm. and so back in the mid 2000s. Motor Trend and the other these car magazines, and you would hold a design challenge contest where they would put up a theme, and you have I think 2 months, and it's open to students, professionals, anybody who can participate and send in their designs, and if your designs get selected, then you go forward. And so 2009, that year, Michelin, the tire company, Michelin, had this design contest where you could send in your design, and my design was selected.
Nice.
To be unveiled at the Detroit Auto Show in 2009. And I'm like, what? Obviously, my design was it was a 2D, so they had these large format printed printouts that mm-hmm. they had my design on, and a bunch of other designers that were all up on the wall. But we got to go to Detroit, my wife and I, and we were there in February. It was snowing and it was pounding there. I was on the wall, and I could not believe. And here's the kicker: the judge out there was talking to all of us. This is before the unveil of the design, and he said that you're the only graphic designer amongst the 11 industrial designers whose design is on the wall. I'm like, all right, I got something here.
That feels good.
That feels good. So that was really fun. So I think that really tickles me and really kind of feels like, wow, that was exciting.
That's great, Santosh. That's such a cool experience.
Yeah.
Well, you've reached the point of the show for the Ask It Forward question, my friend. That is where I have a question for you from my last guest, and you get the opportunity to ask a question of my next guest. I'm not going to tell you who they are, but you can ask them anything. So my last guest, pardon me, was Jess Goldsmith. She's a graphic designer and illustrator out of Brooklyn, New York. The name of her studio or freelance business is Chick of All Trade. And she wanted to ask you, what is your work-life balance like?
What is my work-life balance like?
Do you have one? Do you think work is winning? Do you think life is winning?
I think my bosses will be happy that if I say my work is winning, but I feel like, but I think that's a thing that I'm still working on. I don't think I have a perfect work-life balance.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's like a pendulum. I think it swings from left to right. I think work, sometimes when there's, shit that you got to get done, you got to get done. So however you do it, you just have to do it. But I think I want to find, that's a good question. I want to find, and I think it's important for everybody to find a work-life balance because they go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be, all work. You can't be all just, put your leg up on the couch or, just be spending your time doing other things. So I think, and they influence each other, right?
Agreed.
When you have a great day, like go for a hike and you come back at the end of the day, you're like, that feels so good. And you come into Monday morning and you're like, yes, I'm ready to be here. But if you're on the opposite end, if you've given a project you're full and you feel like I put everything out there and the client, goes with whatever you put out or not, that's different. But at least you get that satisfaction that, I gave my effort and now I can really have a great weekend. I can really go out and enjoy my weekend. So I think they both help the other so you can enjoy it more thoroughly. You can actually feel more good about yourself doing and giving both.
Definitely. No, I couldn't agree more because there's something to be said about the sense of accomplishment with work.
Yes.
And that sense of accomplishment being able to put you at ease and be able to be all in when it is that lifetime, that family time.
Totally.
So, Santosh, what is the question that you would like me to ask the next guest?
Cool. My question is, and I'll be honest, it's not an original question because I've heard it before, but I think it always gives amazing original answers and interesting answers. So the question is, if you had to go to dinner with 3 people, who would you invite? It could be a family member, it could be a celebrity, it could be a designer, it could be somebody you look up to, it could be somebody who's, moved on or still living hale and hearty, and then why would you invite those 3 people?
All right. If you had to go to dinner with 3 people, or if you got to go to dinner with 3 people, anybody, alive or dead, who would they be and why? I love it. Yeah, I've heard it before, but you're definitely right. It brings out different, unique answers for everybody.
It totally does.
Awesome. Santosh, you've reached the end of the Quickie podcast, man. Thank you so much for being my guest today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me.